Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Minds, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters, as well as Mana Traders, the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MagicMikes_N7H, that's Nebraska 7 Harold, 10% off your next subscription with Mana Traders. My name
I
is
love
Evan
whatever
Ir-
just happened.
That's
That was
right.
incredible.
My name is Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Power Dragon.
Man, what's up? I think people, if you're ignoring Aetherdrift, you are missing out. Like, I get it if the theme ain't your jam, but the cards are great.
Yeah.
I like I said, we'll talk about it a little bit here further. Ruben Bressler, Internet's Ruben Bressler.
That's right. Hi, everybody. This is such a fun set. It comes together so nicely. The mechanics might read clunky, but they are elegant in design, and it's a really fun set.
You know, I'm trying to sort of think of it in terms of, you know, and as all things, you try to compare, right? So I'm like, Murders at Karlov Manor, I felt read a lot better than this set, but played a lot worse.
Yeah,
Whereas
sure.
it is the exact opposite, where I'm like, wow,
Yeah, agreed.
these are really meshing in ways. Like the cycling stuff just in there, by the way, was like a huge thing. It was great. So bunch of really cool cards, bunch of really cool mechanics. We're going to go ahead and get started here with our top comment from the last top 10 we did, in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent, letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 Pioneer Masters cards. Ruben?
Well, we have a comment from one of our longest term fans, Scott Campbell, better known as MTG Pack Foils on Twitter, but using his government name for this comment.
His government name.
His government name, that's right. He writes, I'm going to call an audible with this one and provide you two cards. It's wild to think this era of Magic was over a decade ago. But the two cards I am most excited for from Pioneer Masters are Jace, Architect of Thought, and Elspeth, Sun's Champion. As a card-carrying member of Team Azorius, these two permanents were all I needed to win matches with Azorius Control in the Return to Ravnica Theros era of Standard. Hey, Watsy, give us Elixir of Immortality, you cowards!
Goodness. Well,
let's not say we didn't.
Of the two options, I'm going to take the one that I like the most because I can do that. In Elspeth, Sun's Champion. This is a great card that I'm finally glad is on there. It's 2 white, 4 generic mana for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker, legendary Elspeth, of course. It has +1, make 3 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. That's the +1. You go to 5 and you make 3 tokens. -3, destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. And -7, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2, and have flying. And so it's kind of your standard, you know, it has to protect itself, it has to answer things, and then words on the card for the third ability.
Honestly, that ultimate was not irrelevant in Standard either.
Once you're in like the mirrors, right? You know, my Elspeth, your Elspeth, and then
Fan of that card.
Yeah, when your Elspeth went off, it wasn't big enough for their -3 to kill them.
That's right.
Yeah. I love that card. I won quite a bit of money during that season in the Star City Opens. Matter of fact, I think there's footage out there of me playing it and beating a Primeval Titan deck with Elspeth. So, like, just saying, card's legit.
That was the heyday. That was when I was at Star City, commentating those events. And I remember Elspeth as a paradigm shift in terms of how we looked at Planeswalkers. It was really the first 6 mana Planeswalker that we could take seriously. It had a wrath attached to it, not just a removal spell. It made multiple bodies, not just one way to protect itself. And it had a relevant ultimate. To quickly touch on Jace, Architect of Thought, people obviously compared it immediately to the Mind Sculptor and were like, oh, this isn't as good as that. Right. Turns out you don't need to be as good as the best thing that's ever been printed up to that point in order to be playable in Standard. The mini Factor Fiction, the ability to protect itself slightly in a relatively small package was pretty relevant too.
Yeah, and I love that card a lot. And that's also one of those things that, for me, that card in particular, it was one of the first ones I can remember that really showed the power of the give your, opponent's creatures -1/-0. And you're like, damn, that affects a lot. Like, those numbers shift, and you're like, then now I can't kill it, or now I can't get past their blocker, or whatever. And you're like, okay. So, and many Factor Fictions are not to be, underestimated. They are lovely. And Scott, we do appreciate you being a part of the channel and show and Patreon and been with us for a long time.
And extended cinematic universe. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, extended Magic Mice, extended universe. So let's move on here. We do appreciate them. Stay tuned for our top 10 list and let us know what your choice of the honorable mention for Aetherdrift is after you check it out. All right, let's move on here to our number 10. Now we have kind of a standard usuals. I got a couple hires. I got a same. I get it. But no, not too much overlap, which is good. I'll go ahead and get started. And here's a card that I'm glad I put on my list because I thought it was going to play well. It played 10 times better than I was expecting. This stupid little goblin, and goblins are awesome now, by the way. Draconautics Engineer. Draconautics Engineer.
Yeah.
It's a magic card. All right. It's a serious magic card. What this thing does, I'm bringing it up on screen here. It's a red and generic mana for a 2/2. It got a couple abilities. All right. It's a Goblin Artificer. It has Exhaust, 1 red : other creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. We'll talk about how that interacts with a different green card later because it's even better. But it also has 1 red and 3 generic mana : create a 4/4 red dinosaur dragon creature token with flying, which is also awesome. So if you don't have any Mondo combos going around, just a 2 mana 2/2, a bear on curve. Next turn, you can play something and activate it if you like, or the turn after that, you just get to make a dragon. Yeah. Or if you got some extra mana hanging around, you top deck this thing, you pop for 5 mana, and then all of a sudden you got this dragon coming at them. Like, this card was good, and I thought it was good, but man, it was even better than that.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised by this at all. Like, I mean, it's a 2/2 for 2. It's a goblin, so it's already going to get a bonus from all the other goblin stuff, and you have 2 relevant abilities on it. Like, it's good early, it's good late.
This is like a spree card. This card is good on turn 2. It's good on turn 3. It's good on turn 4 after you've played it, and it's good on turn 7 when you top deck it. Because all of your creatures gain haste, including itself. So it's a 2/2 for 2. It's a 3/3 for 3. It's got a 4/4 for 4 packed inside of it. This thing reads well, and I'm glad that it plays well too.
Yeah,
and let's not undersell the artwork either. Like the goblin with like a rocket launcher on top of a dragon. I mean, like, bro.
Yeah.
and
Draconautics,
the special version or whatever with like the crazy goblin hanging on. Like, it's good quality stuff. Is excellent stuff. So yeah, love that card, and I'm glad it came out even better than I was thinking. Ruben, what's number 10?
Hey, we're gonna kick things off the right way, turn 1 with red cards. This red card is not necessarily one that maybe will main deck, but it reminded me so much of one of my favorite all-time red cards that I wanted to touch on it. And my number 10 is going to be Count on Luck. Count on Luck is red for a rare enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. I love this card, and I love cards like this card, like Outpost Siege or really Experimental Frenzy. When I read this card, I was like, this is the sideboard card advantage enchantment I want for my low to the ground red aggro deck. And the fact that it costs 3 and not 4, like Outpost Siege or Experimental Frenzy, is relevant. It effectively draws you an extra card. It's a lot like a Grafted Skullcap if you played 20 years ago, where you're just getting more card advantage. And they stack, too. So if you have a Count on Luck, you can get more and draw more cards as you go into the late game in those longer, grindier matchups when maybe rushing your opponent down wasn't necessarily going to get it done. So I love this card, and I'm excited for it to probably start out as sideboard play.
Yeah, I saw somebody trying to use this with PNLR, so you're getting to cast stuff from exile.
Oh, that's good.
That was actually pretty sweet. So there's a few little tricky things you could do with this that could surprise some people. And I think, like you're saying, it doesn't even necessarily have to be one of those main deck things. You're playing it in the sideboard, or even if you're playing some control mid-rangey thing, like this is a good later card to just give you access to more stuff. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this just sort of lowers that bar of this is the card you're going to bring in versus blue-white because they have a million wraths and you're trying to catch up. And black's always had Phyrexian Arena, and they won't give you this at Phyrexian Arena mana, but they will give it to you at 3 mana as long as you're willing to pay all the pips. And sometimes that matters. That's a good thing when it comes to devotion and whatnot. So this isn't always a drawback. And yeah, I mean, in a sideboard, this will live and thrive because A, I could see it being the difference between mirror matches, and B, I could see the difference between being taking over control decks. So like this card is dope.
Yeah, this card definitely has a future like Experimental Frenzy, where it began in sideboards, and then people went, wait a second, this is good against aggro and against control. I'm just going to play it main deck.
Yep, and you're not going to like combo out, kill them on turn 3 or whatever that type of deck, or maybe it's a big red type deck because I love big red decks. So maybe this can get there. That would be great. All right, Power Dragon, what is your number 10?
I feel bad because y'all picked red cards, and somehow I ended up with the blue card first, which seems very wrong. But Repurposing Bay.
Yeah.
It's 2 colorless and a blue. Basically, Birthing Pod Garage, but it's an artifact. You can pay 2 and tap it, sacrifice another artifact, search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrifice card's cost, put it onto the battlefield. Only as a sorcery. It's just good, man. Like, it's one of those things. The most common use I think you'll see for this will be with the Simulacrum synthesizer decks, right? It's one of those things you can just keep getting another artifact, trigger the synthesizer, keep leveling up, right? Nothing wrong with that at all. You can even, if you kind of put some different silver bullets in there, you can even turn the tokens that you make into something else if you need to. Like, there's a lot of little stuff you can do with this card. I mean, being at a sorcery does limit it somewhat, but the value you can get out of it is just so good.
Yeah, I mean, it's Birthing Pod by any other name with some fixed mana situations. So slightly slower Birthing Pod and also for artifact. But that's okay. That's still fine, particularly even in singleton formats where you only have a 1 of silver bullet in your deck that you're trying to go dig out. This is going to be really popular in Commander in your Urza decks of various flavors. The Iron Man that just came out is going to love this card too. I'm hoping there's going to be a standard deck with some sort of weird mycosynth engine that occurs, but we'll see.
Well, with the what's it called, the Simulacrum thing, like that card is just dumb. That card's not
the
fair.
synthesizer.
The synthesizer, yeah. That thing, that card's not fair. So this card just kind of moseys on up to it, makes a token, and then all those little dorky 2-mana artifact, 1-mana artifact things that you're playing and kind of building up to try to find it, all of a sudden become way better. All of a sudden become more synthesizers or whatever, which gets an enter the battlefield ability. So if you go find another one with a 2-drop artifact, it's absolutely fantastic. So the only thing that's really holding this back is you don't have that pay 2 life to cheat on a mana thing. Thank God, because it didn't need it. And I think that's kind of why. So if I spend my 3rd turn playing the synthesizer, this one, triggering the next turn, and then the turn after that, I go bananas.
Right.
You still got a sweet token out of it, and now every artifact you play is going to be scary. Like
there's also
Power Stones. You can trigger it with that the weird blue artifact that gives you 2 colors, but you can only use it to play activated abilities.
Yeah.
Yes. Like that card's also great. That card was close. That card was close to this top 10. Honestly.
Yes, there's a lot of things you can do with this for sure.
Well, that was a card from like LCI or something.
Oh, I meant
it's from Ixalan. Yeah,
I meant the new 04 that taps for 2 generic or 2 colorless.
Oh yeah, that's in the set too. Though.
That's in this set too.
Yeah.
I would also add that there's at least 1, maybe 2 creatures with affinity for artifacts in this set.
Yes.
So if you drop a Repurposing Bay, it's not impossible to play the new 3/4 for 5 for 1 or 2 mana, sacrifice it, and go get a Titan-sized artifact as well.
And those affinity cards, I can tell you, are good. Like, they are solid. And
I played that deck too. It was fun.
It was kind of scary at times. Let's move on here to my number 9. My number 9 is higher on somebody else's list, and that's okay because it's awesome. Ruben, what's your number 9?
So my number 9 will be my first blue card, and it is also good in the artifact deck. But I don't know that being an artifact is the most important thing here. I think that being an artifact is sort of a secondary bonus. Its numbers, its abilities, its stats are really what's exciting here. It's just a good, solid card, and it is Diversion Unit. Diversion Unit is a generic into blue for a 2/1 flyer, artifact creature robot, and it has the activated ability of pay a blue and sacrifice it, counter target, instant or sorcery spell, unless its controller pays 3. We've seen cards like this in the past. But the fact that it has, the Welkin turn stats that can put pressure on your opponent when you want it to, but then also counter a Wrath later on. It's just a 2-power flyer until you need to deal with whatever your opponent plays.
I think the thing that people overlooked on this card is that it is an artifact creature, right? So it fits into a bunch of different things. Additionally, even the decks that cared about flying creatures and, whatever, like this is a thing for those. Like it doesn't necessarily look that way, when you're looking at the artwork, But yeah, the card low key does a lot of stuff. And like you said, we get a version of this about every third year, it seems like. We
Mhm.
get this type of card. And sometimes it's pay a colorless, it's pay one. Your opponent has to pay 2, 3, or 4 mana, whatever it is. But I think this is a good right center balance on really making the card useful, but also giving you a really strong ability.
Mhm.
Yeah, the closest I think that you come to this was Malevolent Hermit that was
Yeah.
in Innistrad
Yeah.
Midnight Hunt, and that was a fine magic card. That also had Disturb, so you could cast
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
transformed as
That card saw a ton of standard play.
a
Yeah.
ton. And so I think we're now really going to see what the difference is. A is the benefit of being an artifact that much better, is the evasion that much better to kind of make up for the fact that it doesn't have a rebuy ability on the back end, which was
Sure.
part of why Malevolent Hermit was so powerful.
I mean,
So,
the thing that it reminds me the most of, because I'm an old man, is Spiketail Hatchling,
but you, had
which
to,
was
you could just sack that though.
you could just sack that, but it also didn't only had one power. But it is a creature that you can play out proactively to threaten reactive counterspell magic. So it is, it's the latest in a long line of an illustrious type of creature.
Yeah, I get it, but I don't know. I think we've sort of recognized at some point that Spiketail Hatchling is just not a very fun card to play
Yeah,
against.
yeah, yeah. Agreed.
You should have to pay for your mana tithes. That's all I'm
Right.
saying. And they're still fun, and they still work. You should just have to pay for them. That's what this does. Power Dragon, what is your number 9?
All right. After I tell you what this is, I'm gonna have to explain why it's good. Because I ran into a deal on stream last night where people were not convinced on this, even after I was winning games with it. But it's a Ganosaur Rex.
Yeah.
This thing is 3 green, so it's 5 mana. And you're like, yeah, 5 mana is a lot. Well, not when you're getting a damn 8/8 out of it with trample. So, like, this is a big old dinosaur. It has cycling for 2 and a green. And then, and this is crazy, when you cycle it, not just getting a card, you get to put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature or vehicle. It gains trample and it gains indestructible. This card's good.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
there
I
were
remember
times,
on stream you beat the hell out of me with that thing. Like,
Yeah.
dude, I literally I
Same.
won
I beat
at
somebody
least
up with it.
3 games just because, like, oh, you're blocking the like 6 power thing. Awesome. It's an 8, take 6.
Mhm.
Right? Like, that's literally it. That was the game.
I was
Like,
not ready. I thought this gave 1 counter.
Right.
This
no,
gives 2
that's what I'm
counters
saying.
and trample
Yes.
and indestructible.
Right.
This doesn't fair about this magic card. It's ridiculous.
I like when I first read this card and I was like, geez, an 8/8 trample for 5? Incredible.
Exactly.
And then I played the card and I was like, oh wait, the cycling ability is the best card.
Yeah, for 3
Like-
mana, you get 4 things, right?
Yeah.
You're getting a card, you're getting 2 counters, you're getting trample, you're getting indestructible.
And it
Like-
can't be countered by your diversion unit.
Yeah, and like I tried to explain to somebody, even if you never play this as a creature, it could just be a great 3 mana spell
Yeah.
that gets you a card when you're done, right? Like, dude, I played this, like, literally play Surrak, play this guy, bash for 13.
Sure.
Like, that literally happened. Like,
Trust me, I tried to build your dinosaur deck as soon as you destroyed me with yours. And
It's
yeah,
insane.
this was absolutely a 4 of, and this card is absolutely ridiculous. And turn 4 with Llanowar Elf, like it's an 8/8 trampler for 5, like
Yeah.
with a bunch of upside. How good do we have it? How much riches do we need to get as Magic players?
and the thing I'll point out too is people are like, oh, well, it still just dies to remove. Like, but here's the thing: you're playing it in a deck with a bunch of other threats.
Right.
So
Oh,
by the
yeah.
time this shows up, all right, you still got 1 more.
Yeah.
Because if not, here comes 8.
How
right?
many
Like,
Doom Blades do you have?
Yeah.
God almighty, this card was dumb, and you wrecked me. It literally turned the whole game around. I was like, oh, that thing, you can get a counter, whatever. My thing won't die. No, my thing died, and it was over because
Yeah, this card's
Boy,
ridiculous.
God, it was nuts. All right, so let's move on here to number 8. Speaking of a card that was nuts, and a card that I really enjoyed, and also a card I realized why it is legendary. Because oh boy, the Speed Demon is so good. This magic card is a whole lot, and this is one of those things where I appreciate the fact that max speed starts at 1 and goes to 4 versus 0 and go to 3, which is really arguing against myself from earlier than before the show. But regardless, point is the fact that this hits on the speed, and then if you have Unholy Annex already out there, it triggers your max speed to go up to 2, and then you draw 2 and lose 2. Bruh, there's a sequence of magic cards in the mono black deck that end up like Liliana into Sheoldred into this thing, or
Yeah.
Unholy into Sheoldred into this thing. It's crazy. This is an absolutely must kill card. It puts you way, way ahead. It does dumb things with Sheoldred and crazy things with the Unholy Annex thing because it's a daemon. So you're just getting all the upside, drawing so many cards. Wow, this card was nuts. I thought this card was good. This card would be way higher on my list had I been made the list after I played with it.
I will say, flavor wise, I was a little sad that the Speed Demon didn't have haste.
Fair.
That aside, mechanically, it works great. Like, there were multiple times that, like, I think I won one because the opponent was basically ended up killing themselves with their own Speed Demon. So that was kind of hilarious. But there's a lot of time you generally are like, okay, I need an answer for this thing. Because, like, if it lives, they now have another, like, 2, 3, 4 cards.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the real issue of even if I deal with this next turn, I'm already way behind. Right? It doesn't even have to attack or do anything. Just stick for a turn, get you 3 cards. Great.
Yeah. This card and the unholy trio, the 5 toughness deck of Sheoldred, this card, and Unholy Annex together is going to be the center of a mono black or maybe green black, some sort of black supported mid-range strategy where Sheoldred and Speed Demon take over in the mid game, supported by Unholy Annex, and you draw so many cards, and you have nothing with less than 5 toughness that shuts down particularly a lot of red removal. Yeah, it's a very impressive card. It can draw a ludicrous number of cards over the course of a game. Very good card.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point in which I was talking about how much I loved the the card Momentum Breaker. Momentum Breaker is nuts. First of all, Momentum Breaker gains you life, and when Speed Demon takes it away, you can gain some of that life back or whatever. Well, it's also perfect on these curves for Beseech the Mirror, which is why I think it might be black-green in the future versus mono-black. Why? 2 words, Maelstrom Pulse. Because goblins are goblining and other things are stupid, and you need to be able to answer it as soon as possible, and that gives you the perfect way to sack it, as well as nowhere to run. So now you have 8 awesome targets for enchantments to sack as bargains, and it works out great, and this card is bananas, and I love it. Let's move on here to Ruben's number 8. What you got?
So there's a cycle of cards in this set that harken back to some original artifact flavor from the original Kaladesh. And we have the Gear Hulk cycle. I only put 1 Gear Hulk on my list because once again, it gives me some remember berries of a card that I love and that a card that everybody loves. And this is Oil Deep Gear Hulk. Oil Deep Gear Hulk is the blue, black Gear Hulk, which is a 4/4 with lifelink and ward 1. It's an artifact creature construct, and it's a mythic in the set with the ability, when this creature enters, look at target player's hand. You may choose a card from it. If you do, that player discards that card, then draws a card. This is a Thought-Knot Seer. Not exactly the same. They draw the card immediately, but you also get lifelink and ward 1 for your 4 mana. And it's a 4/4. So you're getting a very good rate in a color that doesn't usually get rates this good with lifelink to help, sort of support your speed demons and Phyrexian arenas and whatnot.
This was amusing because it was the tied for the most common Gear Hulk I saw yesterday, along with the other one that's on my list, so some foreshadowing there. But yeah, it was just generally useful. Like, that's kind of the way I described it. Like, it wasn't like it was busted, game breaking, but like it was just bothersome enough, right? Like it disrupted your hand. Like, it cost me some extra mana when I wanted to get rid of it, so it made like planning a turn a little inconvenient. And it's like, all right, it is only a 4/4, but like, they're still going to get 4 life out of it if they block and it dies. It's just like, it was just enough of a nuisance to warrant the spot in all the decks. Like, it's a well-built card all the way around.
Yeah, I will go on a little bit further about other Gear Hulks. I don't know if there's any more Gear Hulks on y'all's list, but there is
I have one.
But no,
I have none.
Fair enough, and we'll get to some more of these later. But I love it, and thanks to Robert Ciro Marco on YouTube, because Thought-Knot Seer, if you didn't play when this thing was in Standard, particularly when you played in person, what would happen is you would throw down that Thought-Knot Seer, you wouldn't say nothing, and then your opponent would just slam their cards on the table, and you'd take a look, and you'd be like, okay, target myself, because that's what you can do. And one of the upsides of this creature is that you can target yourself. If you don't, you're trying to look for some action, great. You're ahead, get their card. They're ahead, get their card. You're behind, give yourself one. Like, it's really cool how flexible this is. I think it was priced to move, and it may not, read, oh my god, it's highest numbers ever, but it's got some good numbers for the mana value.
Yeah, if you're playing live, make sure that they announce who they're targeting with your Oil Deep Gear Hulks.
Before
the
you
Gear Hulks also
look
sick in this set. Like they're
awesome.
huge, like really ornate, like really well done.
Yep, and the special versions are super rad as always. So that's cool. Power Dragon, what's your number 8?
I'm still on the green stuff because I put this in a mono green deck and I was not sad about it at all. And it's Thunderous Velocipede. 1 green for a 5/5 vehicle with trample. Each other vehicle and creature you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if its mana value is 4 or less. Otherwise, it enters with 3 additional +1/+1 counters on it. Which was weird when I read it because it almost felt like that sentence was backwards, right? The smaller creatures generally get more counters, and the bigger creatures get less. This is the other way around. If it's a small creature, it gets 1. If it's a big creature, it gets 3. So your tramplers are just more annoying, basically, is what this card does. But the benefit of this card, other than making your creatures huge, and I will say, also great for +1/+1 counters decks. If you're doing that in Commander, this is going to be popular for those decks. But it leaves you a significant creature after a sweeper, right? It's a 5/5, and no matter what you play, you're pretty much going to be able to crew it because of the extra counter. So you're just like, cool, here it comes. Boom, getting back in there for another 5. And it has trample. Just because. Yeah, this card was solid. Because there's already other cards like Tribute to the World Tree and stuff like that that people have tried to play. And they're kind of just, they're all right. But now that you get it with a pseudo creature, we'll say, that makes a huge difference, I think, and this will definitely replace that in a lot of lists.
Real fast, thanks so much for CNH Conquest for the raid. Welcome, everybody. We're our top 10 Aetherdrift cards because they're awesome. We all 3 got to play in the preview event, so we get to see how cool they were. And yeah, this kind of backwards Tribute to the World Tree thing is very scary. This was a card that I didn't think too much of. I was like, wow, is that should that, the old, is this should be a mythic, blah, blah, blah. Yes, this card is dumb and it scares me and I didn't like it and I wanted to get rid of it as soon as I saw it on the table.
Could I interest you in an 11/11 Aganosaur Rex?
Sure. Exactly. Yeah.
Card's ridiculous. All right. Let's move on here to number 7. Ruben, what's number 7?
My number 7 is another one that I've seen this card before, and so I'm ready to be excited about this card again, and that is going to be Voyage Home. Voyage Home is 5 generic white-blue for a sorcery with affinity for artifacts. Everybody loves that ability. You draw 3 cards and gain 3 life. So it's very easy to cast this for 2 or 3 mana if you're focusing on that strategy is particularly in a standard deck. But even in limited, it was not hard to get a Thopter here, a vehicle laying around there, maybe a 3-drop creature supporting your life, and lo and behold, we draw 3 cards and we lose and we gain 3 life in the middle of it. Thoughtcast, this is not Thoughtcast. Whatever the 2/2 flyer is, this is not, because it does have 2 mana pips in its casting cost. Yeah. But that's okay. We're getting a little bit extra on the back end. We couldn't survive another Thoughtcast meta. This card is still quite good.
Yeah, I'm with you. When I cast it, it was just like the 2 colored pips was just annoying enough that you had to plan around it a little bit more. I'm like, all right, do I do it earlier? Am I going to wait because I want to activate these other things first and then reload my hand, right? Which I liked. I think cards should be powerful, but have a little bit of interplay to them and decision making, not just, all right, I got to the thing, I'm going to go ahead and just get me 3 cards and some life. Yeah. So like, I love that. Great design on this thing, and it is a really strong effect for sure.
Yeah, they pushed the affinity for artifacts cards. Like
they did.
Even I don't know if maybe pushed is a kind of a different word, but I also think it's a really different feel when there's a ton of affinity for artifacts cards versus there's like 3 or something, and they really show you this is the only sort of pressure points we're putting on it when it comes to artifacts and affinity for artifacts. But damn, they paid off. Like it feels real good to pay 2 mana to gain 3 and draw 3. Like that's. Yeah. That's just a lovely feeling no matter what you're playing, or whether it's limited or constructed or whatever, and just paying 3 for this, also great. Like, you're not going to be unhappy with that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Power Dragon, what's from 7?
This is one of only 2 cards on my list I didn't really see get a lot of play. which was kind of sad because I thought somebody was going to play this, but
Mm.
Gonti Night Minister.
Mm.
2 black, so 4 mana for a 3/4 legendary Etherborn Rogue. So I don't know if those creature types will matter for you. But when a player casts a spell they don't own, that player creates a treasure. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to an opponent, its controller looks at the top card of that opponent's library and exiles it face down. They may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, kind of like the old Gonti, and mana of any type can be spent to cast a spell.
Hmm.
This feels like it's sitting in a weird spot, right? Because the words are fantastic, right? Like you trigger and start taking stuff off your opponent's library, and then even if Gonti dies, you still have access to those cards forever, which is great. And it's for each creature. It's not even just like if one or more hit, right? Everything that hits, you get a card. Feels like there's a use for this. I think the issue, in hindsight, like I said, this is one of those. Had I made the list today instead of last week when we were, leading up to the event, is there's so many good cards at 4 and 5 mana in black. I don't know if this actually gets to get a lot of play. Now in Commander, fantastic. You just get to create chaos and it's great and this is awesome, like great. But I don't know if in 60 card if we're really gonna play with this a lot. I feel like maybe post rotation, whatever, a year from now when there's no Shieldrids or whatever, like maybe, we'll come back and go like, oh, remember Gonti? This card's good. We just weren't playing it because we had better cards in the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything on it reads like it should be good. I just don't know if it'll find its home.
I mean, it'll find its home in Commander.
Yeah.
This card's incredible. This is the new Commander for every Dauthi. For every black shadow creature that exists in Magic, of which there are like 40, this is your new Commander.
Maybe fairies as well.
Sure, fairies.
With all the
Tiny
flyers.
Bones is another one that really loves playing with this guy. There's really good stuff that you can do with this card, but you do have to build around this card. Where it does ask something of you, which is a little bit more unfortunate. And being a 3/4 for 4, it weirdly is below rate in mono black
these
right
days.
now in standard.
It is below rate. I actually got to play against this thing in the preview event, and it's it just screams Commander, right? The way it's worded about opponents dealing damage and its controller doing so and so, that to me is sort of the giveaway because they played it, but like for example, it doesn't have Death Touch, which a lot of the Gontis did. And
I was going to say. Right? I thought that the first time I saw this card, I just assumed it had Death Touch.
Right, me too, honestly. And the way I saw it working, they tapped out for it, but then they got to do something to get something exiled so they can play it, and then they have to get through in order to trigger the thing, and there's so many hoops you got to jump through and constructed. It just was not happening. But again, I could definitely see the appeal before you got to see it on the battlefield. Of like, wow, that sounds rad.
Yeah, maybe with pingers or something dealing damage. Sure. Well, no, it has to be combat damage. It's not even damage, so you can't even do that.
Yeah.
Well,
though I did notice in the artwork, Gonti apparently stole the Aether Spark, which is crazy.
How dare he? How dare he?
Good job.
I'll be honest. My number 7, I am surprised. I am shocked. You know what, Ruben? I think you may just be a little distracted because as a man who likes things that numbers to number, they're numbers. My number 7 is 7 mana, 7/7.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's Valor's flagship.
Sure.
Because this card is dope as hell.
Yeah.
It's 3 white, 4 generic mana, but you're probably never paying that.
Right.
It's a mythic legendary artifact vehicle. It's a 7/7 flying first strike lifelink, crew of 3. Oh, and Decree of Justice showed up with a white and 2 generic plus X generic cycling. So you can discard this card, pay a white, 2 generic mana and X to draw a card, and then make X/1/1 colorless pilot creature tokens with quote, this token saddles mounts and crews vehicles as though its power were 2 or greater. Or rather, were 2 greater. And so you have all these 1/1s that you're making. It literally puts itself in the graveyard with its own ability so that Greasefang can go and get it for you. That is the most nutty part, by the way. Whether you were trying to do the thing where you reanimate it in standard or whatever, or you're trying to do something with Greasefang, the fact that it puts itself in the graveyard with value is crazy. This card is super dope.
Yeah, for sure. You're right. I made a misplay here. I should have put this at my number 7. But this card's going to be great with Greasefang, Okiba Boss in any format in which that is a format. You finally have a second vehicle alongside Parhelion 2 that you want to play in that deck. You get that Decree of Justice feeling out of the X2 generic and a white. I had this in a limited deck in the preview event where I got to cycle it, chump block a bunch and then reanimate it with tune up. which is a new card that allows you to permanently turn it into a creature. So there's really fun stuff that you can do with this card.
Yeah, I saw this played alongside, I think it was like the Caravan or whatever. When it enters, it exiles a thing.
Mm.
Like it was that, this, and like Abuelo's Awakening, I think it is, or whatever the
Yeah,
card is.
yep.
Tune up, whatever. And then the one thing that gets like multiple, I think, artifacts or vehicles out of the graveyard or whatever. Like, so nobody's paying the iron price for this, if you will. They're actually just tricking it into play, and it's a pain to deal with.
It's a lot on one Magic card.
Yeah.
Like, let me just look how many lines
Yeah.
of text this thing's, how many different like permanents it makes. Like, I mean, come on, so much. Let's move on here to number 6. Ruben, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is right next to the Valor's flagship, almost right next to, but I needed a white legend. I chose a white legendary artifact for my number 6, so I was close. Just a vanilla 2-mana 3/3 is where we're at now in Magic with Sundial Dawn Tyrant. I don't know how we got here, but generic and a white for 3 power and 3 toughness is what we get. There's no downside. In fact, we get to have an artifact that is oftentimes an upside, and a legendary that is sometimes an upside. I guess being legendaries is its downside, since we can only have one in play at a time. But this is, I mean, I saw this, and this was the most surprising of the legendary uncommons that they came out with. The 2-mana 4/1 in red is whatever. The 2-mana 08 in blue is okay. 2-mana 3/3 artifact creature is a real card.
I think for me, that whole like legendary generic creatures was a weird inclusion, but they all fit a thing. Like even the 08 is like, okay, I go into the big butts deck, right? Like you just have this 08 that's massive for no cost, basically. You know, like does this go, like does the sundial go into some type of affinity for artifacts thing and you just have a quality dude on 2? Like
yeah.
They're kind of low key playable and useful, but just not exciting when you're just going, okay, they're all overstated for what they are because they don't do anything.
Right.
But they do fit some themes.
And they're also hinting us towards Muraganda, which is nice. I like that we have a little bit of a seeding, a little bit of a little amuse-bouche before we actually get the Muraganda cards later this year.
20 years ago. 20 wonderful years ago, Ravnica City of Guild showed up. And
right.
One of the first things they did was slap out the Shocklands. And we never seen them. And it was the Celestia Shockland. And we lost our minds. We were like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And Michael J. Flores, who wrote about the best constructed cards and the best constructed decks and so on, what card did they give him to preview? They gave him Watchwolf. This is a just straight 2-mana Watchwolf. Now, I will note, I think the legendary bit does slow it down a little bit because I did play against someone who was playing this, and when I finally killed it, they played another one, so they clearly had a bunch, or at least 2 in their hand. But whatever. The rate is the rate. And, like, we finally just said, you know what? You don't even need that green mana. Just white and 1. Enjoy your Watchwolf stats. 2025, everybody.
Yep.
Let me go back even further because we used to actually play tournament winning decks with some Mog flunkies.
Yeah.
Right? 2-mana 3/3s that they couldn't do a damn thing unless there was another one to do something with.
That's right.
And now we just get 2-mana 3/3s because.
Yeah.
reasons. And also an additional type as an artifact, which can also matter for
what
reasons. And yeah, that's where we're at. So well done 20 years later. Let's go. All right, our number 5 here. Ruben, what's your number 5? I'm sorry. No, we got to back up. We got to back
No,
up.
you are absolutely correct because my number 6 is higher on somebody's list.
Yeah, both actually was. I didn't say mine, and Ruben, we just talked about yours. So we're gonna roll it back here just a second to our number 6. For my number 6, this is a Gear Hulk that I expected to likely be my favorite. Honestly, it didn't end up being that way. I hope we talk about the one that is, but we'll get to that. The point is, I really like this is one of those I really liked how it read. I really felt like it would be great. They didn't actually have time to get to play with it, which sucks, but there was also not like deck lists out there that just featured it per se. And that's Riptide Gearhulk. This is the blue-white Gearhulk. This thing is priced to move. It's 2 blue, 2 white, and a generic mana. So 5 mana for a 2/5 double strike with prowess. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. When this creature enters, for each opponent, and there's a multiplayer hint for you, but for each opponent, put up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. That is a Teferi, 5-mana Teferi ability on the Planeswalker. You only get it once, but you often only need it once anyway. This solves their most dangerous thing, whatever they're doing. You're playing blue-white, you should be able to answer it in 3 turns anyway. And so, enters with value, blinks for value, and has fantastic stats for value.
Yeah. And closes games quickly, also. If you really need it to be your finisher, you slam this on 5, hopefully on a clear board after a Wrath.
Right.
Your opponent plays their one thing on their turn, and you're able to kill it with a spell, get the prowess trigger, and attack for 6. And then we just do that for a few turns before the game ends. It is absolutely phrased to be used in multiplayer as well, where people love to blink things in blue-white decks too. So really, I mean, all of the Gearhulks are excellent, and this one's no different.
Yeah, I think I want to spend some time messing with this, and if it's possible, to not necessarily care about affinity, but just a quality blue-white artifact deck, right? Like just maybe it's got Urza to pump your artifact creatures or whatever, because this thing has double strike anyway, like just extra bonus. Because like it's just all around useful. Like it's hard to punch past, right? It's going to get rid of a card for a couple of turns. Prowess randomly when I saw it in play actually did matter on this thing a couple of times. Like I was like, yeah, prowess is just kind of thrown on here, whatever. But there was a couple of times just like, crap, they have mana open in a thing. Like I can't really attack with this because it's going to double strike and kill my like 5 toughness dude. Like all right, I'll pass. You know, like, you know what I mean? Like there's a couple of those moments. So it really does matter on this card.
Like turn into a 3/5 double striker or a 3/6 rather.
Yeah.
Is real. Like that's scary. Like you can kill people out of nowhere with just opt whatever and oops, 10 damage. Like it is possible. All right. So that said, Power Dragon, your number 6 was higher, correct?
Yep.
So now we're going to move on to number 5. And I'll go ahead and kick off number 5 so I don't forget it. My number 5 here is, there's a few cards in the set like this, and I got to play a deck that was built around them, and it was awesome. The moment I read this is when I was talking to our buddy Chris, and I was like, hey buddy, let me read you what Marauding Mako does.
Yeah.
Because this card is bananas for 1 mana. I think he's like, all right. And I'm like, okay. I said, it is a 1 red, 1/1. It has cycling of 2 generic mana. Okay, what about it? Okay, well, it's got this incredible sentence that says, whenever you discard 1 or more cards, put that many +1/+1 counters on this creature. Do you have any idea the artist talent decks, the ability to just cycle, you discard your whole hand and draw it and yada yada? Mother of God, this card was awesome, and other copies of it fuel this copy of it, and it's just, and it's free. You get those counters for nothing. You just do whatever, and it's just nothing. Like this card was awesome. There's another blue and generic one that flies, which was also awesome. Getting this discard free value stuff was really impressive. I really didn't see it coming.
Yeah. You want to know something fun I did with this? I played the Marauding Mako. I played that 1/2 flyer you're talking about.
Yep.
And then I played Brass's Tunnel Grinder and discarded 4 cards. And it was great. And then I got to attack for like 10. And it was awesome.
That's a heck of a man. Brass's Tunnel Grinder is a name I haven't heard in a long time. Scrounging Skyray is the card you're talking about. And I do think that the Mako and the Skyray are both gonna end up being in a standard deck together. This was actually the first card that I cast in the streamer event because it was the first deck I drafted and I had it in my opening hand. And I played it on turn 1 and it became a 4/4 and I was the happiest person ever. This card is going to see play in older formats as well, by the way. Bazaar of Baghdad, Hollow One Madness is still a deck that exists. So you're going to see this played alongside that too.
Yeah, if I could give anybody word of warning on playing these cards, is like the deck build for it isn't as obvious as people think. I think in hindsight, I could build a better version of what I played, but the one I played was probably the weakest of the like 6 or 7 decks I played yesterday.
Mm.
Like it mechanically is good, but you got to get the right amount of removal in there or whatever. But you are cycling through a lot of cards, so you'll probably find it. But it definitely is going to take more thought. It's one of those ones I think if you try to build it, obviously, you're going to come up short. You do have to get a little bit creative with it.
All right, Ruben, what's your number 5?
My number 5, I mean, we got a good amount of dinosaurs on this list. We got good dinosaur representation. And it continues with my number 5, which has 5 power, and is named Regal Imperiosaur. Listen, we've talked about it on the show. I don't need to explain to you, viewers at home and co-hosts, why a generic green 5/4 is good. I don't need to explain to you why the sentence, other dinosaurs you control get +1/+1 is good. I don't need to explain to you why having those on the same card together is ludicrous and crazy, and what a world we live in. And it's just a very good card, and I hope that Dinosaur Tribal is a thing as we go further into the year.
I can tell you, having done the scientific research, dinosaurs were freaking awesome. Like, and I'll tell you the thing that really makes it work, and I think people forgot this, that we have Ixali's whatever, the 1/1 for 1
Yes.
that actually taps for dinosaurs. Well, we now have 2 sets of those because we have Llanowar Elf,
Right.
and we have 2 sets of 3-mana dinosaurs because we have the Hammer Skull.
Right.
That guy's nuts, by the way.
Yeah, so now you can literally have a bunch of plays of like turn 1 creature, turn 2, 5/4 or 6/6. Take your pick, right? And then your follow-up is also other absurd things at 4 and 5 mana or whatever down the line. So yeah, this card, it's so good. I played it in some mono green versions that didn't even have a bunch of dinosaurs because I was just like,
the rate,
yeah, whatever. It's a 5/4.
the
Like,
rate's so good.
yeah, like what else am I getting? I'm playing this and I'm playing Pulacranos. Like, what else am I trying to do for 3 mana? Right? I get a 4/5 with reach that turns into something later, and I get a 5/4 that coincidentally will pump its partners or some other thing later. Right? Like, card is dumb.
It's just like, I don't know. This feels like, somebody was like, people love dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are great. They sell well. People like them, so on. They're like, so there's like, let's just make, let's give it a +1/+1, right? Maybe it was a 4/3 or whatever at one point in time. But I feel that feel because someone played against me and I had a lightning strike and I'm just like, I
Doesn't do nothing.
Kill this. Damn it. Like, it's just so ridiculous. And that stupid 3-mana 6/6 that turned into a 7/7 with this thing.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Nice nowhere to run you got there, buddy.
Bruh. Yeah. Nowhere to run on this stupid thing. Like, man, I'm telling you, I was like, I don't know how to stop these dinosaurs and they just stomp me in the dirt. Yep. So yeah, I think there's definitely a dinosaur deck.
The weird thing too, right what I notice is nobody's riding the dinosaurs. Like, why they're even in Aetherdrift, I don't know. Because I was expecting when I went back and looked, there's no like dinosaur riders.
They're obstacles.
Right.
They're right. They're the Sand Raiders from the first
there you go.
the pod race. They're just shooting cars as they drive by.
Yeah, they're in Murrigonda being scary, and this thing is scary. All right, let's move on here to Power Dragons number 5.
Number 5. This is that other Gear Hulk I was talking about, but no secrets here on the Bright Glass Gear Hulk. Green, white for a 4/4. First strike trample. Nice pair of keywords there. When this enters, you can search your library for up to 2 artifact, creature, and or enchantment cards with mana value 1 or less. Reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle. There is a lot you could do with this card. There's a lot of decks that were using this card. Like I said, it is tied for the most common Gear Hulk I saw throughout the day. Like, people were using this with all types of stuff. Like, there was decks playing it with the Wormling, I think it is, where like when an artifact comes in, it gets a +1/+ when you gain a life, whatever. It was in that deck. I used it where you were able to go get like the Duskrow's Reliquary if you need to remove something.
That's
You can go get Basilisk Collar, because then you have first strike, trample, death touch, which is great. That's also a good set of words, right? Like, it's just so many good things you could do with this. I even had somebody play it, go get the pixie so they could bounce something else, so then they could kill something else, right? Like, that was a thing they did. So it's just like, all right, sure, fine.
Look, man, this was the card I wanted to talk about. I'm so glad it is on your list. This card was awesome. The toolbox of this card is absolutely sick. The fact I put like Gold Vein Hydra, could go get that.
Yep.
Haywire Might was in there, was awesome. Like, dude, Basilisk Collar, of course. Like, there was a whole toolbox. Ghost Vacuum was fantastic.
Yep. I had
Dude,
that in a couple lists.
I'm telling you, man, this is like the toolbox deck card. It is so much fun to play. It is so much fun to do really weird stuff with. Like, I just loved it. The ability to draw two cards that you want, that you really can say, what is going to help me right now in this situation? There's lots of one mana cards that can help you in a variety of situations, whether it's, something that's going to affect the board or something that's going to help you on a long term basis. Man, Bright Glass Gearhulk was awesome. Love the hell of
Yeah.
this card.
And if you're willing to extend into a third color, Mockingbird will just let you
That's cute
have
too.
more bright glass gear hulks that you
Love
can
it.
go search for.
Love it.
Not to mention the fact that you're already playing Llanowar Elves and other ways to play it early.
There is a really interesting thing here with this because there was always like this green-white sub thing that wanted you to play creatures that cared about an artifacts entering the battlefield. But when building those decks, you always had this weird tension of like, well, I need to still have enough creatures that matter, but I also need enough artifacts to trigger the creatures. Like now you just get a real creature that also is an artifact that can go get you more artifacts. Like
Yeah,
so
sure.
now that deck has a shot of being real.
Yeah, there was a bunch of cards that I kind of went around and like, what is the one casting one or less converted mana cost to, mythics or rares that you have available, just a whole swath of what helps me win. And like when the Hydra showed up, I'm like, oh my god.
Yep.
Yeah.
I could go get a sick threat while also having a 4/4 first strike with trample. Like, whoo, it was delicious, and I absolutely love that card. It was lovely. Let's move on here to number 4. My number 4 is my last hire, but that's okay because it's great. Ruben, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is not a standard card. My number 4 is probably not a constructed card. My number 4 is a commander card. And my number 4 is going to be a commander card forever. And it is called Unstoppable Plan. Unstoppable Plan is 2 generic and a blue for a rare enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step, untap all non-land permanents you own. Untap all, followed by kind of whatever you want, is scary and relevant in all facets. It untaps all of your mana dorks in your your mana dork deck. It untaps all of your mana rocks in your in your artifact deck. It untaps anything that has a tap ability. It untaps all of your vehicles and the things that crewed those vehicles. It gives you basically a whole second turn. It's a wilderness reclamation by any other name. It's a slightly cheaper Seedborn Muse with less ability that is harder to kill, all of that kind of stuff for the low cost of only 3 mana.
So Unstoppable Plan was isn't just an incredible card for Commander. Like I don't see it not being there. It's already pre-ordered for $10 plus. That's clear. Museborn, Seedborn Muse rather, effects are always dumb, often get banned because they're stupid, and you can do really dumb things in multiplayer formats. I didn't see it, and we talked a little bit while you were gone about it being in standard per se, because I don't know if there's just enough payoffs to do the little stuff or whatever.
Agreed.
And standard is so aggressive to let this really do something. But where it shines, I think it shines really bright.
Yeah, for sure. I think
that's sort of where I'm at on it. I think that there's things you can do, but how strong are they? Right? Like I think is the thing. It's just like, all right, me getting a couple extra activations at the end of the turn, is that enough to warrant it? Like maybe if it's like gain life or draw a card or whatever it is, okay, possibly. But also, am I willing to just play this on turn 3 to maybe untap a mana rock against like the Boros aggro or something, right? Like maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool card though. Again, already pricey and it's not even out yet. Mr. Power Dragon, what's number 4?
My number 4, I guess I just picked, I opened with the blue card so I could talk about all these green cards, I guess, was what happened. But yeah, man, this is a card that green has needed. If you like playing mono green aggro, let me just tell you about your new Lord and Savior, Web Strike Elite. It's green, so 2 mana for a 3/3 insect archer with reach. It has cycling of X green, but when you cycle it, you destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment with mana value X. The best thing about this card is that one of the issues I think the mono green decks have had is when you're going up against all these decks with like Caretaker's Talent and all this other stuff, like you're having to give up slots of aggression to deal with these other things. Now, between this, you've got like Scrap Shooter, you've got like these other options that you can just play more bodies and still answer all the problems you need to deal with. And there was even a situation late where I'm like, well, I'm just looking for a finisher. Let me just go dig for a card real quick. You know, right? Like just let me just cycle it and see what happens. So yeah. And also not being able to die easily to cut down is a big deal. So now
Mhm.
you can play this alongside the raccoon that also removes stuff from the graveyard.
Yeah, the curator
So
guy.
yeah, so now you got a really good combo of 2 mana creatures that are super threatening and hold up to a lot of the mono red stuff, right? You can trade more effectively now with your 2 drops in a lot of those matchups.
Yeah. This card's great. Obviously, it does everything you want on both sides at a very efficient rate. The cycling is not the most efficient, but in a pinch, it's going to be able to take out the thing you need, and it's going to replace itself.
Yeah, and the fact it's got reach is just like it's just value on
Yeah.
value. Like just good old fashioned. What can I get for 2 mana? This is what you can get for 2 mana now, and
Another thing
it's a
too,
lot.
I want to point out is there's a lot of decks playing like Pixies. The Demir deck has a bunch of cheap flyers, and they're all
Yep.
2 power flyers.
Right.
So
Yeah,
this thing just shuts a lot of those down.
for
And just
sure.
buys you some time in that regard. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like it might not win you the game, but it will stop them from attacking, let you build up your board, let you start to roll over with mono green stuff. Like that's always a positive. All right, let's move over here to number 3. And for my top 3, this is one of, I would argue, one of the scariest cards in the set. The scariest card in the set is my number 2. But for the second scariest, the one that I was like, oh damn. And then the one that I got to play against. This was like the first game I played on the client against somebody. And they played the new enchantment that mills you 4 and you can put back an artifact creature or land or something.
Yeah,
That card's
yeah.
also very good. But they did that and they turned over 2 Afterburner experts. And then they did something
Yep.
else and they turned over a third one. And then they played Draconautics Engineer, my number 10, used the first
Hmm.
ability. The way that Draconauts Engineer works, the way that 1 red mana, exhaust works, you're using the exhaust ability. Okay, so the
Yep.
exhaust ability is seen by Afterburner Expert in the graveyard, is
Yeah.
brought back to field. Let's go ahead and read what it does so we can be clear here. Afterburner Expert is a green and 2 generic mana. 3 mana for a 4/2. Awesome. Rare Goblin Artificer. Wow, weird. What's great about that? It has exhaust. For 2 green, 2 generic mana. You put 2+1/+1 counters on this creature. Awesome. So for 4 mana, you can make it a 6/4. Great. When you activate an exhaust ability, any exhaust ability, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Not pay a green to do it, not pay some life to do it, not paying anything to do it. And from what I can tell, it's been a hot minute. There were a few creatures like this. Obviously, the most famous is Vengevine, where you
Yeah.
didn't have to pay anything. You did a thing that triggered a stuff, and then it's all there. And because of the way Draconautics Engineer works, because of that 1 red ability that gives them haste and gives itself +1/+1, this does into the battlefield thanks to exhaust, and then that ability resolves, giving it haste.
Yep.
So you pull
Yep.
out any number in your graveyard when you activate that for 1 mana, and then they all are coming at you. This card is scary as hell. There's a reason it's got 2 toughness and not any more than that, because this card's an issue. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I like this card, but F this card. Like, I mean, like that's sort of how I felt about it at the end of the day. Like this card
Yeah.
was really good. Really good. In a lot of different builds too. Like
Right.
there were people doing kind of fun stuff, like you're saying, with like returning stuff from the graveyard, people putting it in like Insidious Roots variations,
Wow.
getting it back out of there. There were just like a pile of places this card was. Hell, I saw it in a red green goblins deck.
Yep.
Like it was
Just
just like,
value.
yeah, just what? like okay, I guess it's a
Yeah.
goblin, sure.
Just
Let's
a
do it.
solid recursive threat.
Yeah.
It blocks incredibly well. It blocks the Imperiosaur successfully and comes back for more. And this is gonna be a card that is a build around for a standard and also just appear in sideboards as another recursive threat against like control decks that are constantly wiping your board.
Yeah, because the
Yeah,
card
just
itself
good.
triggers its other copies. Like it's
Yeah.
rare because a lot of times these cards that are sort of scary, you need something else, right? You don't need
Yeah.
itself to trigger itself. No, it can trigger itself and all other copies. So every copy after the first, you really have to have some amount of interaction with the graveyard, or this thing is just going to roll you over just through sheer force of will. if you will, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
Card is just bananas and played even better than I was expecting to. This card plays fantastically, and I loved it, and it was awesome. Ruben, what's number 3?
My number 3 is one of, if not the easiest god to turn into a creature forever. And that is Ketramos the New Dawn. Ketramos the New Dawn is a generic, a black and a white for a legendary creature 4/4 god with menace, lifelink, and indestructible, but it can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. Also, whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from graveyards and or battlefields during your turn, you draw a card and you lose a life. So what are we doing with this card? Well, we're doing a couple of things with this card. Mostly what we're doing is blinking. This goes into like a blink shell where you're wanting to reuse your come into play abilities that you're already excited to use. When this creature enters, destroy target creature or gain 1 life or draw 1 card or whatever. And we're already doing those things and already gaining value off of our Muldrifters. So that's going to be helpful in the short term. In the long term, we are also able to trigger this off of getting cards out of graveyards. So any sort of Relic of Progenitus, Tormod's Crypt, anything like that is going to be able to in relatively short order turn Ketramos on. This isn't exactly as much it's not exactly a Tarmogoyf where it's like all you have to play Magic, but you don't got to do a whole lot more than just play Magic in order to get Ketramos to take over a battlefield, because it also has lifelink, so it's feeding its card draw ability, and it's very difficult to block because not only does it have menace, but even if you're blocking it with 2 creatures, it's not dying. So it's a pretty low cost, and it doesn't ask a ton of you, and it gives you a lot in return.
There was a lot of interesting interactions I ran into with this card against it. I didn't get to play it at all, but I ran into it a couple of times. And the fact that you can exile in advance just doing the work your deck wants to do, and then this shows up as a 4/4 indestructible lifelink ready to go, right? Like that's a thing. There's also some weird cases where like you could kill your opponent if you have like a Tranquil Frillback and you exile their graveyard. Like because they lose 6 life. Like there's some weird things that happen with this card that the game state becomes very awkward, right? Like you're like, oh, okay, they only have 1 card in hand. They're gonna get rid of my thing. It's like, oh no, but then they lose life and also draw a card, so now maybe they can get rid of 2 things. Right? Like there was a lot of crazy things, and I like that. I think that's cool that a card can lead to these types of weird spots and makes the game different than you're used to. So yeah, it's not automatic that it comes in as a 4/4, but when it does, man, this thing is a hard card to deal with.
This card is priced to move, as the children would say.
Yeah.
This was my number 9. I love the hell of this card. I brought this up as one of the cards to talk about during preview season. I do appreciate an astute listener and or viewer noting that you don't have exiles, not my exile and your exile. It's just the exile zone. Sometimes cards
everyone's exile.
But but they're all counted together. So, but the other thing that I kind of just brushed over was, I was going on about Rest in Peace and Ghost Vacuum and whatever, and I was like, no, if you just blink your other cards, just blink them.
Yes,
it triggers. You're drawing cards if you just blink them, and you're getting so much value from those blinks. And there's so much stuff with like Pixie Monster, whatever that Pixie thing. The card's nuts, and it just. Things are put in exile and they're blinking and they're going back and forth and they're cloud shifting and just do whatever you got to do, man.
Yeah.
This card is dope and I love it. And it seems incredibly powerful. It's pre-ordered for almost $28 for a reason. I love this card and it's scary. It's a good scary. And I'm excited to see what's going around.
We use the exile zone a ton. We use it for foretell. We use it for impulse drawing. We use it for a ton of abilities all over the place. Much less blinking evergreen and Tormod's Crypt style effects. And it's real easy to get this thing to be a threat. It's already an indestructible card draw engine before it's even attacking.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff you put your Oblivion Ring type effects in your deck for, because. This has to get out of here. You can get like, no, you can't untap with that if I can help it. Thank you. It scares me. Power Dragon, what's number 3?
This is one that I probably would have moved down my list before playing with it, but it actually still wasn't bad. But Chandra Spark Hunter, 3 in a red for a 4 loyalty planeswalker that at the beginning of combat on your turn, you choose up to one target vehicle you control, and it becomes an artifact creature and gains haste until their turn. You can +2, you can sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. If you do, you draw a card. For 0, you create a 3/2 colorless vehicle artifact token with accrue 1, which obviously you can turn into an active creature that turn. And you can -7. You get an emblem that whenever an artifact you control enters, this emblem deals 3 damage to any target. The thing for me is I thought I was really curious on how good making a vehicle was, right? Because we think about planeswalkers like it makes a creature and it can protect itself. But in this case, you're going to have another thing already out if you want to leave this back to block because you need to crew the vehicle.
Right.
So that's a little bit awkward. But man, if you just plus plus and then minus, bruh, like just 3 damage for all the artifacts, like okay. Like so that got me thinking that maybe is a world where you don't really care about vehicles all that much. You're just using this to get to the emblem. I think could actually be a real thing with this card.
Yeah, this was a card that.
Yeah, I played against this in limited. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I played against this in limited one time, and just like most planeswalkers, it won the game by itself. The entire game became about it, and all 3 of its abilities were relevant over the course of that game. All you needed to do was protect home base, let it do its thing, draw a few cards, cycle through all the lands that are in your deck, get to the meat of your thing, and win the game by itself. Card's great.
Yeah, I actually had the complete opposite experience. What I would say is this is one of those planeswalkers that you have to be even or ahead on board, or it's bad. Like you can't be behind. This is not going to save you if you're behind. You pay 4 mana to cycle a card or whatever. You're losing that game. Like you pay 4 mana and make a vehicle with nothing to crew it. It does nothing. It didn't protect itself. So like there's some things that it can't necessarily do that great, but if you're at even or you're ahead, this thing is bananas because you're like, I gotta stop this, and it's active card filtering that leads to active everything becomes a lightning bolt. So,
but I don't mind that actually. I would rather have planeswalkers where we have to work a little bit, but there's a big upside to them. Not just like, all right, I'm gonna play my Liliana or I'm gonna play my whatever. Just start making tokens with my Elspeth, and now I start controlling the board because I have more dudes you can deal with, and they have lifelink, right? This feels like, all right, I'm including it in a deck, and I have a plan, and this is part of the plan, not just, well, if things go bad, I have Chandra, right? So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think what I've sort of found was that for me, the making the vehicle thing just did almost nothing. Like, then again, it was my Chandra, and B, I was behind on board. So for me, it was like, great, make a vehicle and die. You know what I mean? Like, but had there been any, few creatures out there, then that could have been something that could have chump blocked and so on. But I was just too far behind in the match. She didn't save me. Okay, not all planeswalkers should, which is what I think you were talking about.
Yep.
All right, let's move on here to number 2. And we'll go ahead and get my number 2 out of the way. This is the one that R&D specifically noted. This is the scariest card in the set. And this is also the card that I misread and freaked out about a little bit during the previous season because it reads fantastic. Now, I saw absolutely none of this during the preview event. Like, I didn't see one person to even try it, let alone it ever resolve. But my number 2 on my list is Radiant Lotus. And Radiant Lotus is a really cool magic card. And it, in fact, reads scary as hell in many ways. Radiant Lotus is a 6 generic mana mythic artifact that says tap, sacrifice 1 or more artifacts. Note the or more. Choose a color. Target player adds 3 mana of the chosen color for each artifact sacrificed this way. So you make your clues, you make your blood tokens, you make power stones, and then this comes out, and the turn you can play it, you can make 9 mana, 12 mana, whatever, go completely haywire, and probably win the game, quote unquote. I don't know, but this does read great. It's got the big L word right there in the title, and you can't not get excited when a Lotus shows up.
I have a fun story. I saw this card one time.
Oh boy.
I had a bad draw, so the opponent got to do whatever they wanted to. They went mana creature, or it was a mana artifact, Radiant Lotus, then cracked stuff the next turn to kill me with copied Song of Totentans. I died to rats, like out of nowhere. And I was like, you
Amazing.
know what? I ain't even mad at
Yes,
that. Like
perfect.
that's
I
I was like,
deserve
okay
that.
then.
That
Yep,
was that was
that
fun to
that
me.
works. Like I can't even be mad. I'm just like, okay, that's a
Amazing.
use for Lotus. Why not?
Fine.
I think I'm kind of excited to have a one of this in my repurposing bay deck.
Hmm.
Just to go get off of my art affinity for artifact guy at 5. Just to like try to do something crazy with an X spell, like you just said. It's a cool card. I am fascinated to see what people do with it. It is beyond my comprehension what to do with it.
Yeah, I would say that, looking back, my number 2 would probably be Speed Demon or the Green White Gear Hulk,
Mhm.
because I just had so much fun with those cards. But yeah, again, a Lotus is a Lotus. You can't really argue against that. Mr. Rubin, what's number 2?
So I have a single higher on my list, and I have a single same on my list. My number 2 is higher, and my number 1 is the same.
Oh,
Wow. Okay then. In that case, Power Dragon, what's number 2?
this is one I didn't see anybody play with, but I still think it's really good. I just don't think people really were thinking about how to include it yet. But it's another god in Sabsunin Luxa Embodied.
Yeah.
3 green blue for a 6/6 god with reach, trample, and indestructible. It has where it can't attack or block unless it has an even number of counters on it. At the beginning of your first main phase, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then, if it has an odd number of counters on it, you get to draw 2 cards. This card really feels silly. Like, one, getting to 5 mana is not very difficult. Even getting a counter on it, so you can have even numbers or not, fine. Also, it notes that 0 is an even number, so when you play it, you have a 5 mana 6/6 that has reach and indestructible and whatever, so that's fine. But if there's so many cards, we have a talent that puts counters on stuff. We have different creatures that put counters on stuff. We have the Ozolith that can keep you at a certain level if you want to on your counters, putting 2 at a time. Like, so if you just need it for be more cards, you need it to just attack. Hell, you can get the counter to get the cards and then put a counter on it so you can attack with it right on the same turn,
Mhm.
right? So and it tramples. So there's a real possibility you're attacking with an 8/8 with this thing, and you got 2 cards somewhere during your turn, right? Surprised nobody's played with it. I will definitely be putting this in a list probably in the first week that the set's live.
I I played against this one time. It beat the living hell out of me. This card is ridiculous. Like this card probably would have been on my list again had I made it, after being playing the preview event, because y'all, first of all, Lana Worlds exist, so this comes out on turn 4 or earlier.
Yep.
Secondly, the
Yep.
stupid talents exist that put on counters, so you can play with this
Mhm.
all sorts of different ways. And if you don't have the counter, or if you don't have the talent, or whatever, just 5 mana, you can attack into it. The next turn, they're drawing 2 cards and then doing whatever they want after that. Like, bruh, this card is sick. This card is really,
Yeah.
really good.
And
The
apparently, Magic
indestructible
players are
reach.
accepts with thick thighs, as I found out.
Oh, yeah.
The frog thighs have gotten people excited.
Wow. Wow.
But go ahead, Ruben.
We definitely should have made this. We should have made this a frog god, certainly.
Yeah.
Cowards. But
True.
other than that, I mean, having a big body that can block the
Oh, no.
tap out for your card draw in. So here we are.
Yeah. And for those, you did go a little robot there, but again, tapping out
Oh, sorry.
for a giant monster that can block anything. It's got reach. Tapping
Yep.
out for I'm going to get cards later while still having a monster. And you could even do the cute stuff of putting a counter on it at instant speed, so then you can block with it. Like,
Yep.
I assure you, the shenanigans in this card are many. There's a lot of shenanigans, and
Actually,
they scare me a lot.
Another thing to point out is blue has been like dipping in with like blue green or whatever with a few cards that do +1/+1 things, but it's mostly been enough cards to do it in green or green white.
Mm-hmm.
So now you can actually start, with like what's his name? Zamone, I think, from the last set, like get you extra counters, doubles the counters on stuff. Like that could just be the beginnings of a deck.
You remember the backup mechanic from
Sure.
March of the Machine,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that blue
Yeah.
one that gives hexproof or whatever. Okay,
Mhm.
the blue one gives this hexproof and then lets it block when it couldn't otherwise. Like, y'all, for real, this card is so good. I was really impressed, and it's only going to get better. All right, let's move on here to our number 1. And now, based on sames and hires, From what I can tell, Ruben and I have the same. Power
Okay.
Dragon, do you have a same?
I do not.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and let you say your number one, and then we'll go from there because this is probably Ruben's number two. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Very likely because it's Loot the Pathfinder.
And my number
It's
four.
Yeah.
2 green, blue, red. So 5 mana. But you know what? When you get a 2/4 that has double strike, vigilance, and haste, you almost don't care what the abilities are. But it has 3 exhaust abilities. One is green, tap, get 3 mana of any color. Blue, tap it to draw 3 cards. Or red, tap it to deal 3 damage. Man, this card was super annoying when your opponents have it. Like, blocking's not even fun or attacking into it because, all right, well, then they're going to shoot something for free, then double strike it. So, like, you have to have more than 5 toughness to even try to trade with loot, which is already a nuisance, right? Then it's like, all right, well, if it goes in the graveyard and they're using it with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, it's like, okay, well, now everything can do everything, right? Like, as long as you got mana open, you can spend it to do any of these abilities. And drawing 3 is pretty awesome when you don't have to tap and waste 3 damage on something. Like, this card is a hell of a Magic card, but I don't think it's arguable to say this is the best loot we've had so far. I mean, the next best one, I guess, was the 3 mana one that you can play an extra land and then, for 6, maybe fish something out. But yeah, this and being 2/4 is also nice because it's out of the range of just like weird things being able to kill it. Like they designed this specifically to find uses in various builds. Like it's good enough that if I was just playing a teamer deck, I might just play a one of this just because the utility's too good on it.
Yeah. Who needs synergy when you've got a card this powerful that does all of these things? I was fortunate enough to get this in one of my limited decks that I drafted during the streamer event. It does everything you want it to. I even had a pit engineer to be able to draw 6 cards instead of 3, which made me feel very happy. Yeah, very powerful just by itself. You don't need synergy when you're just, LeBron James, when you're the best at everything.
I mean, I got to play against this in Constructed. They had the Agatha's Soul Cauldron, deck. This is kind of where you'd imagine it. And yes, it was very scary and powerful because, the teamer, the teamer cards are all good at ramping. They are masters at ramping and making mana and getting mana. And so you can power this thing out really, really quickly. Land Elves into the 3-drop elemental guy that makes a land token, and then you're there the next turn. Like, card is very silly. Luckily it doesn't win the game by itself. Yes, they drew a lot of cards. They drew a lot of cards with other creatures, but I was still able to power through it. So it wasn't like the game just ended, but the game definitely got, oh God, loot needs to be taken care of. Let's make sure we keep that in mind. And I had to for the rest of the game, but we got there. But either way, this card is great. Easily the best loot so far. They needed to make a good loot card. They did. So high five. This card is priced to move. All right, let's move on here to, again, the same for myself and Ruben. And this is, while being our number one, my number one personally, and of course Ruben's, what I would say is this card would not be my number one if I were to make this list today. I got to play with this card a little bit, and it was fine. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was meh, and sometimes it was really good, as Magic cards tend to go. But it wasn't sort of the overpowering, I unlocked something aha moment, which I felt I did when I misread it before. So our number one here is the Aether Spark. Now, the Aether Spark, this is your number 6. Is that correct, Power Dragon?
No, mine was Ketramos. Sorry. Like, yeah, we already talked about that.
Oh, Ketramos the New Dawn. Okay,
Yeah.
that was your number 6. All right, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so this card is, it's the premier card of the set, right? This is the set. It's cool, it's neat, it's different, it's unique. I love that, right? This is almost like Delirium all by itself or whatever. That's fantastic.
Right.
But at the end of the day, while it reads great, let's go ahead and read it. The Aether Spark is a 4 generic mana mythic. It is the, again, headline mythic of the set because it is a legendary artifact planeswalker equipment. That is weird. That is a bunch of cards, you can't help but go like, oh my God, what does it do? It has 4 loyalty. So, and as long as it's attached to a creature, it can't be attacked and has whenever a quick creature deals combat damage, that's combat damage during your turn, put that many loyalty counters on it. So this thing can get super high loyalty really quickly. And it did. It is advertised. Okay. For +1, You attach it to up to one target creature you control, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. Great. It's getting bigger. It's dealing more damage. It's putting more counters. High five. -5, draw 2 cards. -10, add 10 mana of any one color. Let me tell you, if there was one card that I was on the magical Christmas train to get there, just be like, this is it, y'all. We figured it out. We're going to the promised land. This was not it. This thing was a little slow. It was a little clunky.
Okay.
You clearly know what you're going to do when they attack with it. You clearly know how you're going to answer it. Drawing a couple cards after smashing in with one creature is not that awesome. If the creature dies when it attacks, I think you feel like you're kind of behind. Again, even if this is going to give you a couple cards later, the fact that you kind of have to do the thing and attach the stuff and then get in there and then later you do it, like there was so much of that it kind of took away from what I thought was like really cool and powerful and ended up being kind of clunky and a little, awkward to use.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I did feel very powerful when I played it, equipped it, and had a Planeswalker level power card that couldn't be attacked. It could still be shattered, of course. But I did get immediate value of getting a +1/+1 counter on it. That's pretty great. It is, and then immediately the next turn, you almost are by definition going to draw 2 cards off of it, which is also great. Really, fun. I'm interested to see if maybe Stoneforge Mystic can do something with this card or other instant speed equip kind of effects. I had a great time with the card, and I'm excited to see what people do with it. I think it's another one of those cards that is difficult to know what to do with, and we need some more time with it in Standard.
Yeah, I will tell you, so far I'm 66% winning against this card. Like it's the one time I lost was like I already had a slow draw and they just went nuts with this like funny goblin build with it or whatever, which was great. But I think the use for this card might be in spots where you're not really looking for a Planeswalker type card, right? Maybe you're putting 1 or 2 copies in your Delirium deck, right? Because if you flip it, it's like, great, I'm already 3 toward Delirium, right? Like that's pretty awesome.
Right.
Like maybe it's in a +1/+1 counters deck, right? Where you're putting +1/+1s on things, you're triggering other stuff. Maybe it goes in there, right? I think we have to think about the card differently about the applications of it and treat it like a 4 mana equipment, or maybe again, and maybe it goes in equipment decks, but like a 4 mana equipment thing that goes in these other types of decks more than like this is this really cool different planeswalker and it's going to do this awesome thing because like it has more flaws than other planeswalkers have in the sense that it's an artifact.
Yeah.
And we're already going to be playing a bunch of anti-artifact stuff because if you played it all during the streamer event, there was a lot of artifacts that were annoying. You're probably going to be main decking some stuff, so it does make this more of a liability. So just some things to think about.
If you think of this more Planeswalker, you're going to be a lot happier.
Yeah.
Everything about it what now?
If you think about the Aether Spark like it's a sword, like it's a big beefy artifact that supports your game plan.
Yeah, it's something more than just a planeswalker, right? It's an equipment that just has a cool ability that does other things.
Yeah, this was a card that I got to play I got to play with it in limited, and it was okay. You know what I mean? It was one of those. It's the type of planeswalker that if you're behind, the Aether Spark will not save you. And I think we actually have a few in this set now. And again, I'm okay with that, but that's what it was. And in Constructed, it just felt like again, it was like this weird, kind of awkward mana cost, weird ability, not really doing what they wanted type thing. It didn't really work out. So again, your mileage may vary. Still a great card in terms of just like a mind blowing. What the hell happened here? That's nuts. What a cool idea. That said, let's go ahead and move on, y'all. That was our top 10 Aetherdrift cards. You'll see them on the screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Power Dragon's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we didn't talk about, and we'll select our favorite to highlight during our next top 10. But before we go, I want to thank my co-hosts. Thank you, Power Dragon.
Hey, it's always good to be here, and I am going to be playing a lot of Aetherdrift stuff once it goes live on Arena.
You bet. Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. I think the set's super fun. I had a great time playing it. I think that this is going to be one of we're going to look back fondly on this set.
Yeah, this is not a murder situation where I had high hopes and I felt they were kind of dashed and or lowered quite a bit. This is, I had hopes and they're way better than even I was hoping. And that's always a good thing. We're going to move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, Mana Traders, my co-host Power Dragon and Ruben Brester. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, Blue Sky, do everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, and or Blue Sky at Magic Mics Cast. Our Magic Mics subreddit, like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Join us here next week for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.